What if I told you a true-sounding story about a young archaeologist couple, Muslim by birth but atheist by belief, who entered a forbidden part of Al-Ula like tourists, laughing, taking selfies, even joking about ancient curses until something followed them home? What if their dreams turned into nightmares, their bodies collapsed with sickness doctors couldn't explain, and only one thing, one forgotten word, brought them back to life? This is the story of how two brilliant researchers met a reality beyond science, and how a single phrase, astaghfirullah, saved them from a darkness older than history. They laughed at Al-Ula until the nightmares began. True Islamic story. In the quiet heat of a late Arabian morning, beneath the golden stretch of Al-Ula's sandstone cliffs, a young archaeologist couple named Sammy and Layla walked side by side, their backpacks full of tools, notebooks, and cameras, their minds full of excitement, confidence, and the pride of modern knowledge, for both of them had grown distant from Islam during their university years, identifying themselves as Muslim-born atheists who believed only in what they could touch, measure, and scientifically explain. And although they still carried the cultural warmth of Muslim families, they no longer followed the spiritual path that once shaped their childhoods. And so when they arrived at the Al-Ula project, an ancient region carrying centuries of buried civilizations, legends, miracles, warnings, and mysterious histories, they treated the place with the same casual freedom they treated all their previous archaeological sites, seeing it as both their workplace and their personal playground, taking selfies on top of delicate ruins, laughing loudly in silent valleys, sharing private moments in restricted historical zones, and approaching sacred areas with the same carefree behavior as if they were wandering through a modern theme park, believing that history was only a story and warnings were only myths. And because the site was beautiful, majestic, and breathtaking, they stayed longer than their official work hours each day, exploring forbidden corners, stepping into sealed chambers for the thrill of it, and sometimes even joking about the old inscriptions that mentioned divine punishment and ancient curses, joking that science had already defeated superstition, never imagining that their behavior carried spiritual consequences beyond what the senses could detect. But the turning point came quietly and slowly, like a shadow moving across their lives without warning. For after several weeks of working and playing carelessly at the Al-Ula site, Sammy began waking in the night, drenched in sweat, shaking from dreams he could not fully remember, dreams of dark valleys echoing with cries, cold winds moving through caves, and silent figures watching from cliffs, while Layla began experiencing sudden dizziness, unexplained chest pressure, and a strange fear every time she closed her eyes. And though they both tried to dismiss their symptoms as fatigue or desert heat, the feelings grew stronger each night, with Sammy waking up gasping for air and Layla waking up crying without understanding why. And soon they began to feel uncomfortable even during the day, hearing faint whispers when the wind blew, seeing movement in the corners of their eyes, and feeling as if the mountains themselves carried a weight pressing on their hearts, until one morning they both woke so weak and sick that they could barely stand. And after days of worsening fevers, haunting dreams, and a sense of terror they could not explain, the project manager forced them to return home immediately, telling them their health was at risk. So they left Al-Ula with trembling hands and pale faces, unaware that their nightmare had only begun. For even after leaving the site, their sleep was filled with visions of ancient people crying out in pain, of storms tearing villages apart, of ruins collapsing under divine wrath, and of a deep voice calling them back toward repentance. And their days were filled with exhaustion, nausea, headaches, and a heavy sadness that made every hour feel like a burden. And their families, terrified of how quickly the couple had changed, tried doctors, medications, and tests, yet nothing explained their condition. And it wasn't until a wise, elderly neighbor visited their home, an old woman with gentle eyes who had lived through her own spiritual struggles, that the truth reached them. For when she saw their pale faces and trembling bodies, she whispered softly, "You too have acted in a cursed place the way tourists act in a market. You forgot the respect due to what Allah destroyed long ago. Make astaghfirullah again and again. Seek forgiveness. The soul becomes sick when the heart forgets its Lord. And though Sammy and Layla had once dismissed such words as superstition, something inside them cracked open when they heard her gentle warning. Perhaps because their suffering had pushed them to the edge, or perhaps because their hearts remembered something their minds had abandoned. So they began whispering astaghfirullah throughout the day, quietly at first, awkward and unsure, then with deeper intention as the days passed. And the more they asked Allah for forgiveness, the more their nightmares softened, the more the heaviness in their chest loosened, and the more a strange peace began filling the corners of their broken souls. And soon they realized that their sickness was not only physical, but spiritual, a consequence of forgetting humility and treating sacred history like entertainment. And so they continued for months, then for years, living with sincerity, giving charity, reading Quran, even slowly, learning again. The faith they had once abandoned, and little by little their health restored, their strength returned, their nights calmed, and their hearts softened until they felt cleaner, quieter, and more at peace than ever before in their lives. But one test remained for them, a test that made them cry in private. The fact that despite full recovery, stable careers, and a deeper reconnection with Allah, they were unable to have children. Even after years of medical treatments, du'as, and hope. And though the pain of this test was heavy, they learned to carry it with patience, trusting that Allah, who brought them out of darkness and illness, had written their path with wisdom. So they turned their focus toward helping others, supporting younger students, funding village schools, and dedicating their work to preserving historical sites with respect and humility. Never again treating archaeological places as entertainment, but as lessons from the past meant to guide the present. And although they sometimes looked at families with longing in their eyes, they also held gratitude in their hearts, knowing that Allah had protected their lives, restored their health, and guided their spirits back to the light. And the story of their transformation slowly spread among colleagues and travelers, reminding many people that ancient lands hold secrets, warnings, and spiritual weight, and that a human being, no matter how educated, must never walk with arrogance upon earth that carries the traces of divine history. And so Sammy and Layla continued their lives quietly, with humility, with gratitude, with patience, and with the belief that every test carries mercy, and that forgiveness can heal wounds the world cannot see. And though they never had children of their own, they found meaning in guiding others, loving each other, and walking again on the path they once abandoned, holding tightly to the words that saved them. Astaghfirullah, for the one who returns to Allah never returns empty-handed. If stories about faith, mystery, history, and hidden lessons inspire you, then hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join a community that grows through real stories with real meaning. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that every test has wisdom. Comment your thoughts, your reflections, or your own experience with spiritual awakening. Your support helps this channel bring more powerful stories brought to life with heart, faith, and purpose. Stay connected, stay inspired, and stay blessed.